I'm Margaret, 28 years old, and I thought I knew what unconditional love meant until the night my father looked me straight in the eye and shattered everything I believed about family. For years, I had been the perfect daughter, chasing his approval through every achievement, every success, every milestone. I was a marketing coordinator who had just landed the biggest promotion of my career, and I couldn't wait to share the news with the two people who mattered most. But sometimes, the people who should celebrate your victories are the ones who resent them the most. Before I tell you what happened that night, let me know where you're watching from and hit that like button if you've ever felt unwanted by the people who should love you most. Don't forget to subscribe, because trust me, this story will show you exactly how I turned my father's cruelest words into my greatest strength. Growing up in suburban Cleveland, Ohio, I was what everyone called the golden child. My father, Frank, worked as an accountant for a mid-sized firm, methodical and precise in everything he did. He wore the same navy blue ties to work, organized his desk drawers with military precision, and expected the same level of order from everyone around him. My mother, Linda, was the opposite, gentle and nurturing, always ready with fresh-baked cookies and warm hugs when I came home from school. Our house was a picture-perfect two-story colonial with white picket fence and rose bushes that my mother tended with religious devotion. Every Sunday after church, we would sit around the mahogany dining table for pot roast and mashed potatoes, discussing my grades, my activities, my future plans. Frank never raised his voice, never showed anger, but there was always this underlying current of expectation that I could never quite satisfy. I remember being 7 years old, showing him my spelling test with a 95% grade. While other parents might have celebrated, Frank simply pointed to the one word I had missed and said quietly, "Next time, Margaret, we don't settle for almost perfect." That became the soundtrack of my childhood. Next time, Margaret. Do better, Margaret. Try harder, Margaret. In high school, I threw myself into everything: student council president, debate team captain, honor society, volunteer work at the local hospital. When I graduated as valedictorian with a full scholarship to Ohio State University, I finally thought I had done enough to earn his genuine pride. Frank stood in the auditorium that day, clapping politely, while other parents cheered and cried with joy. When I asked him later what he thought of my speech, he said, "It was adequate, Margaret. College will be the real test." College became another mountain to climb. Business major with a minor in communications. Dean's List. Every semester, internships at respected companies, networking events, leadership positions. I graduated summa cum laude and immediately landed a position at Morrison & Associates, one of Cleveland's most prestigious marketing firms. Still, Frank's praise remained elusive, always qualified with suggestions for improvement or reminders that this was just the beginning. 3 years into my career, I had worked my way up from junior associate to marketing coordinator. I handled campaigns for major clients, managed teams of designers and copywriters, and consistently exceeded my targets. My colleagues respected me, my boss relied on me, and clients specifically requested to work with me. But at family dinners, Frank would listen to my updates with the same neutral expression he wore when reviewing tax returns. My mother, Linda, would try to bridge the gap, gushing about my accomplishments and encouraging Frank to show more enthusiasm. "Isn't it wonderful what Margaret has achieved?" she would say, her voice hopeful. Frank would nod and respond with something like, "She's doing what she's supposed to do. That's what we expect." The conversation would then shift to practical matters like mortgage rates or the neighbor's new car. I had convinced myself that Frank's reserved nature was just his way of protecting me from becoming complacent. Some parents were demonstrative, others showed love through high standards and steady guidance. I chose to believe that his lack of effusive praise meant he was preparing me for a world that wouldn't hand out participation trophies. Deep down, though, I was still that 7-year-old girl desperately trying to earn a smile of genuine pride from her father. At 28, I had built what anyone would consider a successful life. My one-bedroom apartment in the trendy Tremont neighborhood reflected my professional growth. Hardwood floors, exposed brick walls, a kitchen where I actually cooked real meals instead of surviving on microwave dinners. I had a reliable Honda Civic that I had paid off early, a growing savings account, and a 401k that my financial advisor called impressive for someone your age. My personal life was equally stable. David Martinez, a high school history teacher with kind eyes and an infectious laugh, had been my boyfriend for 2 years. We met at a coffee shop where he was grading papers and I was preparing for a client presentation. He made me laugh that first day, something that had become increasingly rare in my intensity-driven world. David never made me feel like I had to prove my worth. He celebrated my small victories and supported me through challenging projects without keeping score or setting conditions. 6 months earlier, I had been assigned to lead the campaign for Hartwell Industries, a manufacturing company looking to rebrand their image for a younger demographic. It was the kind of high-stakes project that could make or break a career. For weeks, I worked 14-hour days coordinating focus groups, collaborating with creative teams, and presenting multiple concept iterations to increasingly demanding executives. The breakthrough came during a late-night brainstorming session. Instead of focusing on the company's industrial capabilities, I proposed highlighting their commitment to environmental sustainability and community investment. The campaign, Building Tomorrow's Legacy Today, resonated perfectly with their target audience. Within 3 months of launch, Hartwell Industries saw a 30% increase in brand recognition among 18 to 34-year-olds. My boss, Patricia Chen, called me into her office on a Tuesday morning in October. I had been with the company for 3 years, consistently delivering results and building strong client relationships. "Margaret," she said, leaning back in her leather chair with a smile I had never seen before, "I have some news that I think you're going to like." The promotion to Senior Marketing Coordinator came with a $15,000 salary increase, my own office with windows overlooking downtown Cleveland, and the opportunity to lead a team of 5 junior associates. More importantly, it represented recognition of my capabilities and potential for growth within the company. Patricia shook my hand and said, "You've earned this, Margaret. Your work on the Hartwell campaign was exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need more of." I spent the rest of that day in a euphoric haze, accepting congratulations from colleagues and already planning how I would share the news with my parents. This promotion represented everything I had worked toward, validation that my years of dedication and sacrifice had paid off. For the first time in my adult life, I felt truly proud of myself, independent of anyone else's approval. That evening, I made reservations at Lago East Bank, an upscale Italian restaurant where my parents had celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary. I wanted this announcement to be special, memorable, worthy of the achievement it represented. I even stopped at a boutique in Beechwood and bought my mother a silk scarf in her favorite shade of blue, and my father a leather portfolio that he could use for his own work. Driving to their house that Thursday evening, I rehearsed different ways to share the news. Should I wait until dessert for maximum impact? Should I lead with the salary increase or the leadership responsibilities? My hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel, not from nervousness about their reaction, but from pure excitement about finally having something that would make Frank truly proud. The familiar ritual of arriving at my childhood home played out exactly as it had hundreds of times before. I parked in the driveway behind my father's silver Camry and walked up the brick pathway, noticing that my mother had planted new mums in preparation for fall. The porch light cast the same warm glow it had when I was 16, coming home from dates or school events. Linda answered the door wearing her favorite burgundy sweater and pearl earrings, the same ones she wore to every special occasion. Her face lit up with genuine joy as she pulled me into a hug that smelled like vanilla and the lavender soap she had used for as long as I could remember. "Margaret, honey, you look wonderful. That new haircut suits you perfectly." Frank appeared in the hallway, still wearing his work clothes, but with his tie loosened and sleeves rolled up. "Hello, Margaret," he said with his customary nod. Neither warm nor cold, just factual acknowledgement of my presence. "Traffic wasn't too bad, I hope." "Actually pretty smooth," I replied, following them into the living room where CNN played softly on the television. The house looked exactly the same as it had during my high school years. Same beige carpet, same family photos arranged on the mantel, same Afghans draped over the arms of the navy blue sofa. The only additions were reading glasses scattered on various surfaces and a pill organizer on the kitchen counter that reminded me my parents were getting older. Dinner conversation began with the usual topics. Linda updated me on neighborhood gossip. The Johnsons were getting divorced after 30 years. The new family across the street had 3 young children who played loudly in their backyard, and the city was finally going to repave Maple Street after years of complaints about potholes. Frank contributed practical observations about property values and local tax assessments. He had opinions about the school levy on the upcoming ballot and concerns about whether the new shopping center would increase traffic congestion. These conversations were comfortable in their predictability, like worn-in shoes that fit exactly right. I waited until we had finished Linda's pot roast and moved on to her homemade apple pie before clearing my throat. "I have some news to share with both of you," I said, setting down my fork and smiling broadly. "Something really exciting happened at work this week." Linda immediately perked up, clasping her hands together. "Oh, how wonderful. Tell us everything, dear." "I got promoted to senior marketing coordinator," I announced, watching their faces carefully. "It comes with a significant salary increase and my own team to manage. Patricia said my work on the Hartwell campaign was exactly what they were looking for." Linda gasped and reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "Margaret, that's absolutely fantastic. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. Isn't this wonderful, Frank?" I turned expectantly toward my father, waiting for the moment I had imagined countless times. Frank finished chewing his bite of pie, dabbed his mouth with his napkin, and nodded slowly. "That's good, Margaret. More responsibility usually means longer hours, though. Make sure you don't let it go to your head." The comment stung, but I pushed forward, determined to share all the details I'd been excited about. "The salary increase is $15,000, and I'll be overseeing campaigns for some of their biggest clients. Plus, I'll have my own office with windows overlooking downtown." "15,000? Frank repeated, his tone neutral. "That's a significant jump. Companies don't usually hand out that kind of money unless they're expecting substantial returns on their investment." Something in his voice made me pause. There was no congratulations, no pride, just a calculated assessment of my promotion, like he was reviewing a business transaction. Linda filled the silence with more enthusiastic questions about my new responsibilities and office setup, but I found myself studying Frank's expressions, searching for any sign of genuine happiness for my success. As we moved to the living room for coffee, I decided to share my gesture of gratitude. "Actually, I wanted to celebrate this promotion with both of you. I made reservations for Sunday brunch at that new place in Westlake, my treat. And maybe we could plan a weekend getaway sometime soon. I've been looking at bed and breakfasts in the Finger Lakes region." Linda clapped her hands together. "Oh, Margaret, that sounds lovely. We haven't taken a real vacation in years." Frank's expression shifted, and for the first time all evening he looked directly at me with something approaching intensity. "You think throwing money around is going to solve everything, don't you?" The change in Frank's tone was like cold water thrown across my excitement. Linda looked between us uncertainly, her coffee cup frozen halfway to her lips. "Frank, dear Margaret is just being generous. She wants to celebrate with us." "Generous?" Frank repeated, standing up and walking to the window. "Is that what we're calling it now?" He turned back to face me, and I saw something in his eyes that I had never seen before. Not disappointment or disapproval, but something harder and more personal. "You make one good career move and suddenly you're the family provider ready to take care of your poor old parents." I felt my stomach clench with confusion. "Dad, I just wanted to share my success with you. I thought you'd be happy for me." "Happy?" he said, letting out a bitter laugh. "Margaret, do you have any idea what it's like to watch your daughter succeed while you're barely keeping your head above water?" Linda set down her coffee cup with shaking hands. "Frank, please. Not tonight." Not tonight. Frank's voice rose slightly. When Linda? When is the right time to talk about the fact that our 28-year-old daughter is offering to pay for vacations while we can't even keep up with our own bills? The words hit me like physical blows. What are you talking about? I didn't know you were having financial problems. Why didn't you tell me? Frank laughed again, but there was no humor in it. Tell you that the accounting firm laid off half their staff 6 months ago. Tell you that your mother's diabetes medication costs more than our grocery budget. Tell you that we've been living off credit cards for the past year because my reduced hours barely cover the mortgage. I looked at Linda, who was crying silently into her hands. Mom, why didn't you say anything I could have helped? I can help now. We don't need your charity, Margaret, Frank snapped. We managed to raise you and put you through college without handouts. We don't need you swooping in now with your big salary and your condescending generosity. Condescending. I stood up, my own voice rising. I was trying to celebrate with my family. I was trying to show my appreciation for everything you've done for me. Everything we've done for you, Frank repeated slowly. He walked over to the desk in the corner and pulled out a folder. You want to know about everything we've done for you? Your college fund, Margaret. The money we saved for 18 years for your education. My heart started racing. What about it? It's gone, he said simply. Every penny. We spent it on medical bills and house repairs, and trying to maintain the lifestyle you expected when you came home for visits. I stared at him in shock. That money was mine. You told me it was my inheritance. Inheritance. Frank's voice was getting louder. You're 28 years old, Margaret. You have a career and your own apartment and a boyfriend who treats you well. What do you need an inheritance for? It's not about needing it, I said, my voice shaking. It's about trust. It's about honesty. How could you spend that money without telling me? Linda finally looked up, her face streaked with tears. We were going to pay it back, sweetheart. When Frank's hours picked up again, or when I could find part-time work that would accommodate my doctor appointments. Pay it back, I turned back to Frank. You spent my college fund and didn't even think to ask me for help with whatever financial crisis you were facing. Frank slammed the folder down on the desk. Ask you for help. Ask my daughter to solve my problems. Do you have any idea how that would feel, Margaret? Do you have any concept of what it's like to be a failure as a provider? You're not a failure, I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I could see that Frank wasn't listening anymore. I worked 60-hour weeks for 30 years. He continued, his voice getting increasingly agitated. I sacrificed my health, my hobbies, my relationships with friends, everything to provide for this family. And now I'm 58 years old, passed over for promotions by people half my age, watching my daughter earn more money than I ever did, and you want to take me on vacation like I'm some charity case. That's not what I meant, I protested. I just wanted to do something nice for you. Something nice, Frank repeated. You know what would be nice, Margaret? If you understood that your success feels like a reminder of my failures. Every achievement you celebrate, every promotion you get, every dollar you earn is proof that I wasn't good enough to give you the life you deserved. The room fell silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Linda was sobbing quietly, and I felt like the floor was dissolving beneath my feet. This wasn't how this evening was supposed to go. This wasn't how my father was supposed to react to the best news of my professional life. Dad, I said quietly, I never meant to make you feel bad about my success. Frank looked at me with eyes that seemed to see right through me, and when he spoke again, his voice was so quiet, it was almost a whisper. You want to know the truth, Margaret? You really want to know what I think about your success and your promotions and your perfect life? I nodded, though every instinct told me I didn't want to hear what was coming next. Frank took a deep breath and looked me straight in the eye. If I could go back, you'd never be born. The words hung in the air like smoke from a fire, visible and choking and impossible to ignore. Linda gasped, and Frank just stood there, his chest rising and falling with rapid breaths, as if saying those words had required enormous physical effort. I felt everything inside me go completely still. Not just quiet, but frozen like the moment when you step outside in January and the cold hits so hard that your lungs forget how to work. What did you say? You heard me? Frank said, his voice steadier now, as if crossing that line had given him some kind of terrible permission. Your mother was 26 when she got pregnant with you. We had been married for 3 years and we had plans, Margaret. Real plans. Linda stood up shakily. Frank, stop. Please stop talking. But Frank wasn't stopping. It was like watching a dam break, years of resentment pouring out all at once. I was supposed to get promoted to partner at the firm. We were going to travel to Europe, maybe move to Chicago where the opportunities were better. Your mother wanted to go back to school, get her teaching degree. I sank back down into my chair, my legs unable to support me anymore. I don't understand. You've been married for 31 years. You chose to have me. Chose, Frank laughed bitterly. Your mother was so excited when she found out she was pregnant. Crying happy tears talking about nursery colors and baby names. How could I tell her that all I could think about was everything we were going to lose? Frank, please, Linda begged. Don't do this. Not like this. She deserves to know the truth, Frank said, turning back to me. Do you want to know what I was doing the day you were born, Margaret? I was sitting in the hospital parking lot calculating how much money a baby was going to cost us. Diapers, formula, doctor, visits, childcare, clothes they outgrow every 3 months. I sat there adding up numbers while your mother was in labor. Each word felt like a physical blow. Stop, I whispered. And then you were born and everyone expected me to be overjoyed. The nurses kept congratulating me, asking if I wanted to call relatives, telling me how beautiful you were. All I could think about was the partnership I was never going to get, because I couldn't afford to take risks anymore. The trips we were never going to take because every spare dollar had to go toward your future. Linda was crying harder now. She was a beautiful baby, Frank. You loved her. I saw you love her. I tried to love her, Frank said, and those words cut deeper than anything else he had said. I really did try, Linda. But every time Margaret succeeded at something, every time she won an award or got good grades or earned a scholarship, all I could think about was what I could have accomplished if I'd been free to focus on my own career. I found my voice, though it sounded like it was coming from very far away. So my achievements weren't something to be proud of. They were just reminders of your sacrifices. Everything was a reminder, Frank said. Every birthday party we threw, every school event I had to leave work early for, every college visit, every time someone told me how lucky I was to have such a successful daughter. Lucky. Like it was some kind of gift instead of a burden I had been carrying for 28 years. You carried me like a burden, I repeated slowly, trying to make sense of words that felt impossible. Frank's voice got even quieter, more precise, like he was reading from a prepared statement. There were times, especially when you were younger, when I would lie awake at night and imagine what our life would have been like if your mother had never gotten pregnant. I would picture the apartment we could have afforded in New York City, the clients I could have pursued if I didn't have to worry about school districts and safe neighborhoods. I would imagine being 35 and single-minded about success instead of 35, and worried about saving for your college fund. Frank, stop, Linda pleaded. You're destroying everything. I'm telling the truth, Frank replied. And the truth is that Margaret's success feels like mockery. She gets to be ambitious and focused and single-minded about her career because she doesn't have children weighing her down. She gets to make choices based on what she wants instead of what her family needs. She gets to be the person I never got to be, and every time she celebrates another achievement, I'm reminded of everything I gave up to make her success possible. I stood up slowly, my hands shaking. So when you said if you could go back, I'd never be born, I meant it, Frank said, looking me directly in the eye. If I could go back to 1995 and convince your mother to wait a few more years before having children, I would do it in a heartbeat. We could have built our careers, first traveled, saved money, figured out who we were as people, instead of immediately becoming parents. The silence that followed was different from before. This wasn't the pause before more words. This was the silence of something ending. I looked at my mother, who was staring at Frank like she had never seen him before, and then I looked back at my father, who seemed almost relieved to have finally said what he had been thinking for nearly 3 decades. "You've been resentful of my existence for my entire life," I said, and it wasn't a question. Frank nodded. "I tried not to be. I tried to love you the way I was supposed to. But yes, Margaret, I have spent 28 years wondering what my life would have been like if you had never been born." Something extraordinary happened in that moment of complete devastation. Instead of falling apart, I felt myself becoming very, very calm. It was like watching a building collapse from a safe distance, destructive and terrible, but also strangely clarifying. All the pieces of my childhood suddenly fit together in a pattern that made perfect, horrible sense. The lukewarm responses to my achievements. The way Frank always seemed distracted during my school plays and graduation ceremonies. His tendency to turn every conversation about my successes into discussions about practical concerns or future challenges. The emotional distance I had attributed to his personality was actually something much more deliberate, protective detachment from a child he had never wanted. I looked around the living room where I had spent countless hours doing homework, watching television, and trying to earn my father's approval. The family photos on the mantel told a different story now. In every picture, Frank's smile looked forced, his arm around my shoulders stiff and dutiful, rather than loving and proud. 28 years, I said quietly, testing the words. "You've resented me for 28 years. Frank didn't deny it. "I provided for you, Margaret. I kept a roof over your head and food on the table and clothes on your back. I paid for your braces and your school supplies and your college application fees. I drove you to soccer practice and piano lessons and sleepovers with your friends. I did everything a father is supposed to do." "Everything except love me," I said, and Frank flinched slightly. "Love isn't always a feeling, Margaret. Sometimes it's a choice. Sometimes it's showing up and doing your duty even when you don't want to." I turned to my mother, who was still crying silently. All these years, did you know how he felt about me?" Linda looked up with red, swollen eyes. "I knew he struggled with the responsibility. I knew he felt overwhelmed sometimes, but I never imagined he actually wished you had never been born." "But you suspected," I pressed. "You knew something was wrong." Linda nodded reluctantly. "He was different after you were born. More serious, more worried about money, less spontaneous. I thought it was just normal adjustment to parenthood. I thought all new fathers went through something similar." I thought about all the times Linda had tried to encourage Frank to show more enthusiasm about my accomplishments, all the times she had made excuses for his emotional distance, all the times she had tried to bridge the gap between us. She hadn't been covering for a reserved personality. She had been compensating for a father who fundamentally resented his child's existence. The financial information Frank had revealed earlier took on new meaning now. "The college fund you spent," I said. "How much was it?" Frank hesitated. $43,000. $43,000 that you saved for my education and then spent without telling me because you were having financial difficulties. We were drowning, Margaret. Medical bills, reduced income, unexpected expenses. We didn't have anywhere else to turn." I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app, scrolling through my account balances and recent transactions. "Do you want to know something interesting, Dad? In the past 2 years, I've given you and Mom approximately $12,000. Birthday gifts, Christmas gifts, dinners. I've paid for that time. I covered Mom's car repair bill, the money I gave you for the new water heater." Frank's face went pale. "Margaret, we never asked you for that money." "No, you didn't ask. I offered it freely because I thought I was contributing to the family that loved and supported me. But now I'm realizing something." I looked up from my phone. "You've been living off my generosity while resenting my existence. You've been accepting financial help from the daughter you wish had never been born." Linda gasped softly. "Oh, Frank." The mathematical reality was stark and undeniable. Frank had spent my inheritance, accepted my gifts, and benefited from my success while harboring nearly 3 decades of resentment about my mere existence. Every dollar I had contributed to their household had come from someone they wished wasn't alive to contribute it. The partnership you didn't get, I continued, my voice growing stronger. The travel you didn't do, the life you didn't live. You blame all of that on me being born, but you've had no problem accepting the benefits of my career success. Frank opened his mouth to respond, but I wasn't finished. You know what the really twisted part is? I've been supporting your comfortable retirement with the salary I earn at the job I got because of the education you helped pay for with the college fund you then stole from me. You've created this perfect circle of resentment and dependency. I stood up and walked over to where Frank was standing by the window. For the first time in my adult life, I was looking at him without any need for his approval or fear of his disappointment. He was just a man who had made choices and now had to live with the consequences of those choices. You want to know what I think, Dad? I said, my voice steady and clear. I think you didn't get that partnership because you were mediocre at your job, not because you had a family. I think you didn't travel to Europe because you didn't have the courage to take risks, not because you had responsibilities. I think you've spent 28 years blaming me for your own limitations and failures. Frank's face flushed red. That's not true. Isn't it? I stepped closer. Because successful people with children manage to advance their careers all the time. Successful people with families manage to travel and pursue opportunities and build the lives they want. The only difference between them and you is that they don't use their children as excuses for their own lack of ambition. The confrontation reached its peak in that moment when Frank realized I was no longer the child desperately seeking his approval. I was an adult woman with my own resources, my own power, and my own ability to set boundaries. The dynamic between us shifted completely as I stepped into a version of myself I had never been before, someone who refused to accept undeserved guilt. You want to go back and erase me from existence? I said, looking Frank directly in the eye. Fine. Let's start right now. Frank blinked, clearly not understanding what I meant. If you could go back and I'd never be born, then stop living off the daughter you wish never existed. The words came out calm and precise, like I was reading from a contract. Linda stopped crying and stared at me, and Frank's mouth opened slightly as the implications of what I was saying began to register. Starting immediately, I'm cutting off all financial assistance to this household, I continued. No more dinners that I pay for. No more gifts of money for household expenses. No more covering emergency costs when your car needs repair or the furnace breaks down. If you wish I had never been born, then you can live as if I had never been born. Margaret, Linda whispered. No, Mom. This is what he wants. He's made it very clear that my existence has been nothing but a burden and a disappointment. Well, burdens and disappointments don't pay for other people's lives. They don't contribute to retirement funds or cover medical expenses or take their parents on vacation. I turned back to Frank, who was starting to look less confident and more concerned. You know what's interesting about your fantasy of a childless life? You imagine all the career success you would have had, all the freedom and opportunities. But you never imagined doing any of that without the financial safety net I've been providing. That's different, Frank said weakly. Is it because from where I'm standing it looks like you want all the benefits of having a successful daughter with none of the emotional responsibility of actually loving that daughter? You want my money but not my presence. You want my support but not my achievements. You want my contributions but not my existence. I pulled out my phone again and opened my financial planning app. Let me give you some numbers, Dad, since you're so good with numbers. Over the past 5 years, I have contributed approximately $36,000 to your household through direct gifts, paid meals, covered expenses, and holiday presents. That's not including the emotional labor of trying to earn your approval or the time I've spent trying to build a relationship with someone who fundamentally didn't want me to exist. Frank was silent now, and I could see him processing the financial implications of what I was saying. Your monthly expenses, based on what you've told me about your financial struggles, are approximately $4,000. Your current income from reduced hours and mom's disability payments is about $3,000. That leaves a monthly shortfall of $1,000 that you've been covering through credit cards and apparently my college fund. Margaret, please, Linda said. Don't punish me for what your father said. I looked at my mother with genuine sadness. Mom, I'm not punishing anyone. I'm simply accepting the reality that Dad has presented. He wishes I had never been born. Well, if I had never been born, you would have had to figure out your financial problems without my help. So that's exactly what you're going to do now. I put my phone away and picked up my purse. I'm going to make this very simple for both of you. You have 30 days to figure out how you're going to manage your expenses without any assistance from me. That includes finding solutions for the medical bills, the credit card debt, and the ongoing monthly shortfall in your budget. Frank finally found his voice. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. You've made it clear that my existence is a burden and my success is a source of resentment. Fine. Live your life as if the burden had never existed. See how successful you feel when you're not benefiting from the achievements of the daughter you never wanted. I didn't mean it like that, Frank said, but his voice lacked conviction. Yes, you did. You meant every word. And now you get to experience the logical consequences of those words. I headed toward the front door, then turned back one more time. You know what the sad part is, Dad? I came here tonight to celebrate with you. I wanted to share my success with the people I loved most. I wanted to take you on vacation and buy you nice things and show you how grateful I was for the sacrifices you made. Frank's eyes were wide now, and I could see that he was beginning to understand the magnitude of what he had lost in those few moments of brutal honesty. But it turns out those sacrifices weren't made out of love. They were made out of duty and resentment. And I don't owe anything to someone who sees me as a mistake that ruined his life. I opened the front door and paused on the threshold. If you ever decide that you actually want a relationship with me based on mutual respect and genuine affection, you know my number. But until then, I'm going to live my life surrounded by people who are glad I exist. Margaret, wait, Linda called out. I turned back to her. Mom, I love you, but I won't be part of a family where my existence is seen as a burden. When you're ready to have that conversation without Dad's resentment poisoning everything, call me. And then I walked out of the house where I had spent my entire childhood trying to earn love from someone who was fundamentally incapable of giving it. The drive back to my apartment felt like traveling through a different universe. Every familiar street looked the same, but felt completely changed, like I was seeing my hometown through new eyes. I called David from the parking lot of my building, and he was at my door within 20 minutes, carrying a bottle of wine and wearing the concerned expression that meant he was prepared to listen for as long as necessary. He said what? David's voice was quiet with disbelief as I finished recounting the evening's events. That if he could go back, I'd never be born. I repeated, surprised that saying it again didn't hurt as much as I expected. 28 years of thinking I wasn't good enough to earn his love, and it turns out I was right. But not because I wasn't good enough. Because he never wanted me to exist in the first place. David set down his wine glass and pulled me into a hug. Margaret, you know that says everything about him and nothing about you, right? I know that now, I said, and realized I actually meant it. For the first time in my life, I actually understand that his inability to love me has nothing to do with my worth as a person. The next few weeks were a strange combination of grief and liberation. Grief for the father-daughter relationship I had thought I was building all these years, and liberation from the exhausting effort of trying to earn approval from someone who was constitutionally unable to give it. I found a therapist, Dr. Rebecca Steinberg, who specialized in family trauma, and helped me understand the difference between healthy parental boundaries and emotional neglect. Children aren't responsible for their parents' unrealized dreams, Dr. Steinberg told me during our third session. Your father's resentment about his career limitations is his issue to resolve, not yours to carry. 3 weeks after the confrontation, Linda called me. Margaret, we need to talk. How are you managing financially? I asked not unkindly, but without my previous eagerness to solve their problems. It's been difficult, she admitted. Your father had to go back to full-time hours, and I found a part-time job at the library. We're looking into refinancing the house and consolidating our debt. Good, I said. Those sound like responsible adult decisions. Margaret, your father wants to apologize. I was quiet for a long moment. Mom, I don't need an apology for him telling the truth. I need him to figure out whether he actually wants a relationship with me or whether he's just missing the financial benefits of having a successful daughter. He's been different since you left, Linda said. Quieter. I think he's realizing what he's lost. What he chose to lose, I corrected. I didn't disappear, Mom. I removed myself from a situation where I was unwanted and unappreciated. 4 months later, Frank called me directly. Margaret, could we meet for coffee? I'd like to talk. We met at a neutral location, a small cafe near my office where neither of us had emotional history. Frank looked older, more tired, and when he spoke, his voice carried a humility I had never heard before. I was wrong, he said simply. About everything. About blaming you for my choices, about resenting your success, about taking your help while secretly wishing you didn't exist. I studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation or emotional pressure. What changed your mind? Living without you, he said. These past few months, having to solve our problems without your help, watching your mother cry because she missed you, realizing that every good thing in our family was connected to your presence and your generosity. He paused. I've been seeing a counselor too, learning about how resentment works, how it poisons everything it touches. And I want to try again if you're willing. Not as your father who expects you to prove your worth, but as a man who wants to know the remarkable woman his daughter has become. I considered his words carefully. Dad, I'm willing to try building a relationship with you, but it has to be completely different from what we had before. I'm not going to chase your approval anymore, and I'm not going to accept responsibility for your emotional well-being. Frank nodded. I understand. And Margaret, I'm proud of you. Not just for your career, but for having the strength to walk away when I treated you badly. You deserve better than I gave you, and I hope I can learn to be the father you actually deserve. It wasn't a fairy tale reconciliation. Rebuilding trust took time, and there were many conversations where we had to work through decades of misunderstanding and hurt. But gradually we developed something we had never had before, a genuine relationship between two adults who respected each other. A year later, when David proposed to me in the same Tremont Park, where we had our first real conversation, Frank was the first person I called with the news. His response was immediate and genuine. Margaret, I'm so happy for you. David is a lucky man, and you deserve all the love in the world. The wedding planning process became an opportunity for our family to practice our new dynamic. Instead of feeling obligated to include my parents in every decision, I involved them when I wanted their input and set boundaries when I needed space. Frank respected those boundaries without argument, and Linda began to see that she could have relationships with both her husband and her daughter without constantly trying to manage the tension between us. My career continued to flourish. Within 18 months of that terrible confrontation, I was promoted again to marketing director and eventually started my own consulting firm. But the most important change was internal. I no longer needed external validation to feel worthy of success. I had learned the difference between healthy family relationships and emotional manipulation, and I surrounded myself with people who celebrated my achievements rather than resenting them. The final lesson came from an unexpected source. During one of our monthly coffee meetings, Frank said something that surprised me. You know, Margaret, I realize now that my resentment wasn't really about you at all. It was about my own fear of not being good enough. When you succeeded, it forced me to confront my own limitations, and instead of using that as motivation to grow, I blamed you for making me feel inadequate. That insight crystallized everything I had learned about family love and self-worth. The people who truly love you will use your success as inspiration, not as ammunition for their own insecurities. The people who deserve space in your life will celebrate your achievements without keeping score or asking what's in it for them. I learned that being unwanted by someone doesn't make you unworthy of love. It makes them unworthy of you. I learned that you can't earn genuine affection through perfect behavior or extraordinary achievements. And most importantly, I learned that sometimes the people who should love you most are incapable of it, and that's a reflection of their limitations, not your value. The moment I stopped begging for crumbs of affection from someone who saw me as a burden, I realized I had been starving myself of the love I actually deserved. Now I surround myself with people who celebrate my existence rather than resent it, and every day, I'm grateful that I had the courage to demand better. Today, my relationship with my parents is healthier than it has ever been, but it's built on mutual respect rather than obligation. Frank has learned to manage his own emotions without making them my responsibility, and Linda has learned to love me without apologizing for Frank's behavior. We've all grown from that terrible night when the truth came out, and while I wouldn't wish that experience on anyone, I'm grateful for the clarity it ultimately provided. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is refuse to accept less than you deserve, even from family, even from the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally. Because the truth is, real love doesn't come with conditions, resentment, or scorekeeping. Real love celebrates your existence and supports your success without asking what's in it for them. And if someone can't offer you that kind of love, then maybe it's time to stop settling for what they're willing to give and start demanding what you actually deserve. What about you? Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who didn't appreciate your worth? Have you experienced that moment when you realized you were accepting less than you deserved from people who were supposed to love you? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about family relationships and finding the courage to demand better. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that their worth isn't determined by other people's ability to recognize it. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember you deserve to be surrounded by people who are grateful for your existence, not resentful of it. Until next time, choose love that celebrates you, not love that merely